Okay, so imagine you have a superpower where you can like literally sit down and focus and do work, deep work for hours and hours in end where you lose time of perhaps all consciousness, and even more so you feel like doing it effortlessly. And so not only does this exist, but you are actually biologically hardwired to do so. And so this type of terminology, what I'm actually explaining right now, is called the flow state. And again, it is hardwired, so you are biologically programmed to actually be in that state of mind. And what is that state of mind? It's basically maximum cognitive capacity. And that basically means that you are doing the work seamlessly. Time is just so effortlessly, and you can basically do it super quickly. And basically, in simple terms, it's called deep focus, or yeah, basically deep focus. And so in this specific video, guys, I'll explain you what the flow state of mind is and use some abstract terms of basically how it looks like as an example. And throughout the entire course, I'll basically help you guys of how you can enter that state of mind and help you tremendously accomplish any type of task and whatever activity or goal or work or whatever it is, if you're a student or assignments, etc. So what is the flow state mind and how do you achieve it? Now, flow is often mentioned or referred as being in the zone. If you guys watch rap, for example, Lil Baby mentions as motion. So a lot of people call it motion as well, or you're in the zone, or you're in the mode. There are a lot of terms for it, but I'll stick to more the appropriate biological terminology of it. And it's a state of complete absorption in an activity. So imagine literally yourself sinking into that activity, and everything else outside your cognitive brain, like literally everything outside, has no relevance anymore. You are just fully submerged into that activity. And so what that happens is it leads to heightened productivity and absolute enjoyment. And I'll go through that in just a little bit now, but you will figure out that when you go through that activity, that it is rewarding in itself. So you are basically doing the activity in the sake of doing the activity, and that's how you find enjoyment. So this guide will explore the concept of flow, its component, and I will also alliterate some examples in various activities of how you can basically achieve it. And so, historically speaking, aside to some of the referral terms, what other people call it, this is actually mentioned in Taoism, which is a famous Chinese philosophy of how to live a peaceful life. And it's also mentioned in various literature from Buddhism as well as Hinduism. And so in Taoism, they call it Wu Wei, and in Buddhism, action on non-action. Let me just fix the slight spacing error. And so this has actually been founded by Maslow in 1964, and Maslow described it in abstract terms of claiming peak experience. And eventually it got translated by the person Csikszentmihalyi. Let's just call him Mihaly for now because I really have trouble expressing his formal name. But it has been popularized by Mihaly, and is basically talk about maximizing productivity and performance, and basically that's all that it is to it. And so what is flow? Now let's literally jump straight to it. So flow, the concept of flow was introduced by our Mr. Mihaly, which he's an American-Hungarian psychologist in the 1970s. And so if you guys already study classical psychology or psychological literature, then you understand that psychological literature is already existing for quite some long time, like over hundreds and hundreds of years. But Mihaly has only popularized this theory in the 1970s. So this is quite fascinating, quite a new topic. And it's quite new in terms of the relation of how much research papers actually exist on this particular topic. So it's very exciting and very new, and it's something that has a lot of field to exploring as well. And so in theory, flow is a state of consciousness where productivity seems effortless. And now we have over 10,000 research papers on it, still counting, and I do speculate for it to double it within the next decade. They describe neurophysiological shifts that amplify which are most critical to thriving, which is learning, creativity, and productivity. So the thing is about flow is the state of flow is very critical to you driving forward, and hence why it exemplifies the benefits of learning, creativity, and productivity. Because at its core, you driving forward boils down to learning, creativity, and productivity. And so when happens in the brain, so what happens what happens in the brain? So specifically in the brain, I'll elaborate on this throughout the course a little bit more, but throughout the brain, there are the certain wavelengths, the frequency known as the alpha theta brainwaves, and they are the ones that are stimulated. And the fun fact, and that will come to one of the pillars later, is the brainwaves of flow are very similar to deep sleep, and that's very, very interesting. So what happens during flow? During flow, you see a dynamic equilibrium. So you literally find a task that has a perfect balance. I like to describe it as a Goldilocks zone between perceived action capacities, which is the anxiousness, as well as the perceived action opportunities, boredom. So it's basically a channel between anxiety and boredom. And so your mission is to find out that perfect zone between things being too anxious and things being perhaps too bored. And so what happens more is there's increase of intense focus and concentration. There's merging of action and awareness, where I basically described that earlier, where you literally sink into the work. You lose reflective self-conscientiousness. And this is very interesting. If you guys have played Call of Duty or GTA 5, you know the third person point of view where you can literally see yourself within the game. Imagine that in a philosophical sense in real life. So imagine, we realize we are here, we are realized right now that, like, you're watching this video, for example. And so when you are in flow, it's like you remove that perspective. It's literally just the task itself. And so that's a cool way to kind of see it. Sense of control and autonomy of action, where you basically feel like you have total control of what you're doing at that given moment. Distortion of temporal experiences, so you actually lose your biological imperatives such as a sense of time, sleep, and hunger, and stuff it just disappears, if that makes sense. The feeling of intrinsic rewards, and this talks about an autotelic experience, and this describes like when you enjoy stuff because of what it is. Like if you play football, you just if you're in flow in football, you enjoy playing football because just football is just a fun sport and it's something worthwhile. Now, flow is often identified under the field of interactionism, and interactionism is basically the dynamic between the person and the environment. And you have to understand one thing about flow: it's not a light switch. It's something that emerges gradually. Like it comes in over time, through some triggers, and eventually it will just gradually exit throughout its way. So it doesn't just come at an instant. It gradually comes, and then eventually it slowly progresses into exiting. And so flow can appear in any single type of activity, so it's not objectified to specific stuff like, oh, you can only do flow when you play football, or you can only do flow if you're doing your assignment or research paper. Like flow can be in any type of activity, and that's basically the crazy and amazing thing about it. It's not subjective to specific things, as I mentioned earlier. Attention and focus is key role for maintaining the flow state. So it's literally boils down to attention and focus, and we'll get that throughout the videos a little bit more specifically. But staying in flow requires that attention is held by limited stimulus, which is basically having an environment where you are distracted as least as possible. And so in order for you to actually enter the zone, some research explains that you should make the task 4% harder, and I've practically experimented that myself. And so how do you make a task 4% harder. I'll explain that in the other videos as well, but the idea here is to make the task slightly harder so that you don't overshot on it becoming too anxious or for it to become, too difficult to a point that it's literally boring. And so, where are we now? Autotelic personalities. Now these people, and this is the personality you would like to become, autotelic personalities are people who are not only more likely to enter flow, but they are the people who are more likely to be in flow longer times of period. And you've got to imagine autotelic personalities are people who literally enjoy life for every small moment, and they are those people that like enjoy the things of like just doing it for the sake of doing it. And this is good for flow, but also an effective abstract philosophy to find meaning in life. So autotelic personalities, the ones who enjoy the little things per se, these are the ones who, in my opinion, actually enjoy life a little bit more because they find more meaning in the little minimalistic things. And so 3 characteristics of autotelic personalities are curiosity, which is interest in a particular manner, persistence, strength and stamina, as well as low self-centeredness. Now, last but not least of this video, I know it's a little bit long, but once you guys completed this video, every single video that progresses, we basically already touch on the practical implementation, but we are basically almost done of the theory of flow. And so once you guys have understood of what flow is, then it's much easier for you to practically implement and start entering flow. And so what are some of the examples of flow? Music. So if you guys play an instrument or if you like to listen to music, music is a sheer example of you entering flow. So flow can arise when deeply engaged in listening to music or performing music. Musicians experience flow when performing, particularly when they are intrinsically motivated. Gaming. If you're a gamer, video games have a balance of challenge and skills can trigger flow. Games like Flow by Genova Cha are designed based on flow theory, and in fact a lot of games are programmed and they hyper engineer these areas that trigger gamers to be in flow, because as a video game designer your goal is to make sure that the users are as engaged and participate as long as possible within their video games. And so virtual reality is another example where immersive VR games can induce flow more rapidly than traditional gaming. Football, I believe this is the last one. Football is another example. I mean, it can also be other sports and physical activities such as basketball, running, and volleyball. And so flow has 4 pillars, and this is what I will go through with you guys in the next video. But understand that the 4 pillars of flow are flow blockers, flow proners, and flow triggers. Flow blockers, flow proners, flow triggers, and the flow cycle. And so once you understand these 4 pillars, then you have basically understood the entire concept of flow, and you can literally dive right into deep focus and you'll effortlessly complete any type of activity for hours straight and without even burning out. So I'll see you guys in the next video.